Hey you guys, Cornflake Man here. Well, I did it. I just ruined the first half of Spider-Man No Way Home for myself. So I figured what's the best thing to do is come out here and ruin it for you as well. So this is your one and only warning. If you do not want the first half of Spider-Man No Way Home ruined, stop watching the video now. Okay, we're moving forward. I can confirm that the movie does open directly after the events of Far From Home. You actually hear the end of that movie playing over the top of the Marvel logo and the opening scene that comes in the front of every Marvel movie. Peter Parker actually ends up taking MJ to his house, or rather Aunt May's house. The whole dude sequence that we saw in some of the TV spots and trailers is not in the movie. It appears that was just made for a marketing purpose. Just before Peter and MJ make it back to Aunt May's apartment, we see a brief scene where it appears that Happy and Aunt May have broken up. After Peter and MJ make it back to Aunt May's, the newscopters follow shortly thereafter. We then cut to later that night where we see Aunt May and Peter relaxing on the couch watching TV. The DODC knocks on the door with a warrant and takes them all in for interrogation. During the interrogation, Ned actually incriminates himself. It's briefly mentioned that the Stark Industries has been shut down. I'm not 100% sure that I heard that part correctly, but I do believe that's what I heard. We then cut back to Aunt May's. We see Peter, Happy, and Aunt May there. Matt Murdock actually shows up. He is, in fact, in the movie. He essentially tells Peter, MJ, and Aunt May that they are safe, but he warns Happy that he may have some trouble ahead. Then at that moment, there's actually a brick thrown through the window. Matt Murdock actually catches it before Spider-Man can. We then cut to that scene where we see Peter and MJ. MJ is on her bed, Peter's on the couch, they're FaceTiming each other. We'll then flash forward to the first day of their senior school year. Now they actually get separated by the security at the entrance of the school, so Peter enters the school by himself. He gets greeted by some of his teachers and staff. They're actually quite thrilled that Spider-Man goes to their school. We then see Peter and MJ sync up on the roof of the school. This is where she reads the newspaper to him. They go in for a kiss, and Ned ruins that moment. They talk about their future college plans and going to the same school together. We then have a scene where Aunt May brings Peter college letters, and he's been denied for all of the ones thus far. They then get down to the last college letter, which is from MIT. Peter and Ned go and meet MJ at the diner where she works. They want to open their letters together to see if they all got accepted. Unfortunately, none of them get accepted because of the current reputation that Spider-Man has. This is the moment that Peter gets the idea to go see Dr. Strange. So when he shows up to the sanctum, we see it covered in snow. It's briefly mentioned that this is because of a blotched spell that Wong cast. We also learn in this moment that Wong is the acting Sorcerer Supreme because of the blip. Peter starts by asking Strange if he can use a time stone to go back in time and undo what Mysterio did. Strange reminds Peter that he no longer has the time stone. Wong doesn't actually threaten Dr. Strange to not cast a spell, but he does warn against it and eventually just ends up saying, "Leave me out of this," and he sling rings out. While Strange casts a spell, he has to modify it several times at the request of Peter so that MJ, Ned, and Aunt May can remember him. His last request is that Happy also remembers him, but I don't believe that Dr. Strange actually makes that modification. This is actually the moment where the spell goes wrong. During the apex, we can see a outline in the spell that looks like a figure that we're not quite able to make out. At the last moment, Dr. Strange is able to reduce the spell into a small crystal, which prevents it from causing further damage. At the apex of the spell, Peter actually blurts out, "Everyone that knew I was Spider-Man before should still know." Thinking that the spell hasn't done anything, Peter tries to fix the college issue. He tries to track down the MIT professor, which he learns is currently on the bridge on the way to the airport. He flies there in a Spider-Man suit. He finds the car that she's in and starts to ask about the college application. In that moment, his spider sense kicks in. We see Doc Ock show up through the bridge. He immediately starts asking about his machine. Peter doesn't understand what's going on. Doc Ock gets angry and throws a car at him. There's a family of 3 in the car. The car throws Peter off the bridge. He's able to use his web to prevent the car from falling. and he saves the family inside. Doc Ock then mentions the fancy new suit not saving him. He then grabs Peter and throws him through a UPS truck. This is where we see Spider-Man emerge with the arms. And then Doc Ock says, "Looks like we've got competition." They then fight back and forth as the MIT lady's car starts to fall off the bridge. Spider-Man is able to save it with his web. He goes down to actually get her out of the car, but Doc Ock follows him down. He attacks Peter before he can save her. Then Doc Ock notices that Peter's nanotech is starting to be absorbed by his arms. Doc Ock goes in for the kill. Peter's nanotech moves to save his body, revealing his face, and Doc Ock realizes that this is not the Peter Parker he's used to. We then have an interesting turn of events where the nanotech is actually taking over the arms, and Peter Parker now has control of Doc Ock's arms. He uses them to save the MIT lady in the car and puts the car back on the bridge. She then says that she'll give Peter and his friends a second chance at MIT. Just then we see a bomb drop in from the Green Goblin. Doc Ock actually recognizes him and says Osborn. The Green Goblin goes in for the kill, but at the last moment Doctor Strange uses the sling ring to teleport Peter and Doc Ock to the basement. We learn that Doctor Strange has already captured the lizard. Doctor Strange explains that the spell started to pull people from other universes that know Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He then proves this point by asking Doc Ock if he knows a Peter Parker in his universe that's Spider-Man. Doc Ock responds yes. Doctor Strange points at Peter and asks if that's him. Doc Ock responds no. Doctor Strange then tasks Peter with capturing the Green Goblin next. He suits up Spider-Man's wristband with magic that will automatically teleport the baddies back to the basement. Peter tells Doctor Strange that he'll need help, so this is where we see Ned and MJ get invited to the Sanctum. They start doing some research to see if they can identify where the Green Goblin is. There's been a report of a monster flying through the air at a military research facility. Doc Ock tells Peter that Norman Osborn died years ago. Peter then takes off swinging through the High Line at dusk in his black and gold suit while he has MJ and Ned on FaceTime. When he gets to the wooded area, he's talking to MJ and Ned, and then Electro appears behind him. Peter tries to use the magic wristband to send Electro back to the prison, but it doesn't work. It goes right through him. Electro then attacks Spider-Man and knocks him down. Electro then goes in for a large attack. At the last moment, Sandman shows up and saves him. Sandman and Peter then team up to take down Electro. Peter then sends Electro and Sandman to the basement with the magic wristband. We're then back in the prison, where we see that Electro recognizes the lizard. We then cut to a scene where we see Norman Osborn in that alleyway with the Green Goblin mask off. He's hearing the voice talk to him. He argues with it, he smashes the mask and then runs off. Then Peter gets a call from Aunt May. She tells him that Norman Osborn is actually with her at the feast facility. Peter rushes off to see her. When Peter gets there, he sees Norman and Aunt May sitting at a table talking. Osborn is upset because Oscorp doesn't exist, and neither does his son. Aunt May then convinces Peter that he needs to help him. We then cut to a scene of J. Jonah Jameson at a news desk. One of his members calls him and tells him that they've been able to locate Peter and May. They follow Peter, May, and Norman back to the Sanctum, where May drops off Peter and Norman. While there, Norman sees the others imprisoned, talks to Doc Ock, and learns that from Doc Ock's perspective, Norman has been dead for several years. The Sandman then takes it one step further and explains to both of them that from his perspective, they've both been dead for a while and they were both killed by Spider-Man. Doc Ock and Electro then try to remember their last moments before they were teleported to this universe. Their last memory is both fighting their version of Spider-Man. Doctor Strange then shows up with a magic cube and tells Peter that it will reverse the effects of the spell and send the villains back to their original universe. They overhear this and of course don't want to go back, learning that they actually die at the hands of Spider-Man. Strange tells Peter that it's their fate, and he starts the spell reversal process. In the middle of casting the spell, Peter snatches the magic cube from Doctor Strange and then teleports him into the prison with the magic wristband. We then see the scene where Doctor Strange says, "This is why I never had kids." Peter runs out the Sanctum and is pursued by Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange knocks him out of his body, but surprisingly Peter still has control over his body even when he's in the astral form. He makes his way back to his body, tells Doctor Strange this is the coolest thing that's ever happened, and takes off running with the cube again. Doctor Strange sends his cape after Spidey and then knocks him into the mirror dimension. On top of the train, Peter tries to reason with Doctor Strange, but it doesn't work. Strange ends up getting the cube from Spidey. At the last moment, Spider-Man's able to web Doctor Strange up, take his sling ring, and leave Doctor Strange in the mirror dimension by himself. We then see Peter go back to the basement where the villains are still imprisoned. He takes Doc Ock, Norman Osborn, and Sandman with him to Aunt May's house. We then learn that he still has the fabricator machine there at Aunt May's, and he's going to use it to help them. Okay, and that covers up the summary of what I've seen so far in Spider-Man No Way Home. That's only about half of the movie. I had to resist the urge to continue watching. I hope you enjoyed this review. I'm still hyped and looking forward to actually watching the movie in the theater. I've definitely spoiled some things for myself, but I feel that there's a lot more in store, so I'm pretty excited to see how that plays out and how this movie leads into the rest of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe and have a good one.